About 2,600 years ago, in a city called Miletus, a few Greeks began asking some rather inconvenient questions. What is the universe made of? Why do things change? Is there something behind everything we see? Until then, many of those answers had come from myths. If there was a storm, some god was angry. If the crops failed, another god was angry. If two peoples went to war, there were probably several angry gods and a serious communication problem. But these thinkers tried something different. They did not necessarily stop believing in the gods. They simply began looking for explanations within nature itself. And that small difference changed history. Because when an explanation can be debated, challenged, and replaced by a better one, what we have is no longer just a story. We have an investigation. And so, almost without realizing it, those thinkers began something we would later call philosophy. The first of our suspects is Thales of Miletus. Thales observed the world and concluded that the underlying principle of everything was water. Yes, water. Mountains, animals, human beings, stars. Wat is subgeorgen the bagel starting fumos? Then Anaximander came along and argued that the origin of everything could not be any known element. It had to be something limitless and undefined. He called it the apeiron, which sounds impressively profound. It is also a very sophisticated way of saying, there is something there, but I still don't know exactly what it is. Then Anaximenes arrived, claiming that the fundamental principle was air. Renu alumini hair one alive, and thou walazine, as a quiet trophy. For Frantax, he basically looked at all the previous answers and said, why choose only one? None of them found the definitive answer. But that is not the most important part. The real breakthrough was the method. One thinker proposed an explanation. Another found a problem with it and offered an alternative. The world was beginning to be investigated through observation and reasoning, not only through inherited stories. Then the conversation became more complicated, because two philosophers stopped asking what the universe was made of, yet others, and started arguing about whether anything could truly change. One of them was Heraclitus. For Heraclitus, reality was in a constant state of transformation. Day turns into night. What is hot becomes cold. People are born, grow old, and die. His philosophy became closely associated with the image of a river. We cannot step into the same river twice because the water has already moved on. And neither are we exactly the same. But Heraclitus did not believe that the world was meaningless chaos. Behind all this change, there was an underlying order, a kind of shared reason he called the logos. The world changes, but not in just any way. Parmenides took a different path. He began with an apparently obvious idea. What is, is. And what is not, is not. Rismarmartim. It sounds like something a person might say after drinking too much wine. But stay with me. If something comes into existence, where did it come from? Laila Frems, from something that already existed. Then it did not truly appear from nothing. Did it come from something that did not exist? That would be impossible, because nothing is not the kind of thing that can produce something else. Parmenides therefore concluded that true being does not come into existence, disappear, or change. Our senses show us movement and transformation. Reason, according to him, shows that fundamental reality must be eternal and unchanging. Heraclitus saw change everywhere. Namtrag of Lanislax argued that change could not be the ultimate truth about being. What's terrorist and peculiarities in Lanfam of freelies to Gurbis and Simo Lunret to Boa there, and immediately for safety. The battle took place between their ideas. But they left behind an enormous problem. While it's these core regions, walls were few train of station of it. The most creative answer came from two men named Leucippus and Democritus. Leucippus and Democritus proposed that everything was made from tiny, eternal, and indivisible particles, ergo atoms. The atoms were neither born nor destroyed. They simply changed position and formed different combinations. Offspring's name, a plant, an animal, and your own body would be different arrangements of those invisible components. In this way, something could remain permanent while the visible world continued to change. For atoms to move, they needed space. That is why the atomists also accepted the existence of the void. Democritus did not discover the atom of modern physics. To Trage, he had no laboratory, no microscope, and no periodic table hanging on the wall. His theory was a philosophical response to the problem of change. Even so, it was not bad for someone who lived more than 2,000 years before atomic physics. Incidentally, Democritus was a contemporary of Socrates. So the term pre-Socratic does not necessarily mean that all these philosophers were born before him. This more revent of recast Marty. We grouped them together mainly because they were more concerned with nature, the cosmos, and the fundamental principles of reality. But philosophy was about to change direction. It would stop looking only toward the heavens. Bekruver en Bakes at agent in work French, for worst insist. Depredative Mindsambers, attested by the 5th century BCE, Athens had become a major political and cultural center. Isarging Rishu Spraz Centov Kersen of South, that's Democritus Mishurin for Srebrina. Women, enslaved people, and foreign residents could not participate as citizens. But those who could participate debated laws, decided public matters, and defended themselves in court. Hashtag, in that world, knowing how to speak meant power. Information. Gintro presented with syllable idea, presented with confidence, could receive applause. Fortunately, that only ever happened in ancient Greece. This was when the Sophists appeared. They were traveling teachers who taught rhetoric, argumentation, and skills useful for public life, and they charged money for it. This scandalized some people, although no one seemed particularly concerned when other professionals charged for their work. One of the most famous sophists was Protagoras. He is credited with the statement, "The human being is the measure of all things." The idea was that we experience reality from our own perspective. The same wind can feel cold to one person and pleasant to another. So which of them is right? The problem begins when we apply this idea to morality, politics, and truth. If every society has its own rules, does universal justice exist? Or do we simply call something just because our group has decided to accept it? Another important name was Gorgias, a master of rhetoric. Gorgias understood that words do more than communicate information. They also produce emotions. If Aeolus Sinbart, they can reassure, frighten, seduce, and persuade. A true statement can be ignored. This word flang thurpert, a sprachber peshas to is avierig. Philosophy had discovered something rather uncomfortable. Truth and persuasion are not the same thing. Then another man appeared, someone who also debated in public and attracted curious young people. From the outside, he looked like another sophist. But he did not charge money, deliver grand speeches, or promised to teach anyone the secret of success. Icumbersimber of war skeensports. A lot of questions. Betrachtum simarea de flabring. His name was Socrates. Socrates walked through Athens, talking to politicians, soldiers, craftsmen, poets, and young men from influential families. He asked questions such as, what is tag? What is justice? Ours action? How does matter snuda? What does it mean to be courageous? What makes a life good? At first, the other person would answer confidently. For 5 minutes later, they were no longer quite as confident. 10 minutes later, they probably regretted leaving home. Socrates would take an answer and ask more questions. If the person contradicted themselves, he exposed the contradiction. This process became associated with the elenchus, the Socratic method of examination and refutation. Vermans has tam reception of reducing cost. A reference has been created. Opagadio, offer rhetoric, while with a rejected breaking how hearing your upper much would problem was one kunhaling from prove rockdogrist. As same as a nyan stickiteral name what evil her first. Colonius Pliatet, La Brava. Jose Yumis favorite grade vigil for portists. At a column the void. The purpose was to discover whether our beliefs could survive serious examination, because it is easy to claim that we know what justice is. The difficult part is explaining justice without contradicting ourselves 3 sentences later. Socrates wrote no books. Everything we know about him came through other people, mainly Plato, Xenophon, and the comic playwright Aristophanes. And their portraits do not completely agree. Salmon's hashtag, that is why separating the historical Socrates from the character constructed by these authors is so difficult. What we have is not a recording. It is a collection of testimonies, memories, philosophical works, and comedies. Recamdops ad worko, we mirror propakal wasers. As tagnaf really sounds for yast ueni. According to Plato's account, one on falls is borodors. Up to winner with the del sobro, at reeling with works was Heraclitus at Delphi, whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. The answer was no. Tires meant Socrates was confused. For Yerzer, as Tang, he did not consider himself wise. So he began searching for people who supposedly possessed knowledge. He spoke with politicians, poets, and craftsmen. It is a merle would perceive as frap. Hitinu faderants. Handag, he discovered that many of them knew certain things, but also believed they knew far more than they actually did. Socrates concluded that his small advantage was that he recognized his own ignorance. This gave rise to the famous idea usually summarized as, "All I know is that I know nothing." But that sentence does not appear in exactly that form in Plato's writings. Socrates was not claiming that he knew absolutely nothing either. His point was more precise. We should not pretend to possess knowledge that we have never examined. The problem is not being wrong. The problem is being wrong with astonishing confidence. For Socrates, living well required caring for the soul, examining our decisions, and discovering what kind of person we are becoming. Money, reputation, and power were not worth much if we did not know how to use them properly. That is why philosophy stopped being only an investigation of the universe. It now also asked, how should we live? Socrates compared himself to a gadfly stinging a great sleeping horse. The horse was Athens. His task was to disturb the city so that it would wake up and examine its own certainties. It was a good metaphor, but cities, like horses, sometimes lose patience with whatever keeps biting them. It's Sarah's privary. Athens had been through wars, defeats, and political conflict. The city was wounded and deeply suspicious. Some men associated with Socrates had taken part in disastrous political events, although that was not directly included in the official charges. The charges were different. Told Bry Bierzoft. In connection of Burdelight, Socrates attempted to show that the accusations were contradictory. But his defense was not exactly a masterclass in charm or public relations. Cybor, instead of begging for mercy, he claimed that his activity benefited Athens. He was found guilty. There's Neptuner invest that reward the meaning war ductions and liard. When Tuffin Guomok's museum island droid. 3 counts reward chase, and the leader of the 6 tour Miletus with prosence word the free Gordy when scenes that's and lost. When Tabiem or Wanuzen, return word lady, absolutely. The pre-West is me out the youths here. Miss you of 3 to in the fields the Sophists highest, Mildir, Wills, the moral more sailing up on the gleams, more than more porting is nor voting to war. Marshal Ford be answerers. Letting calling. The Pernilla boy had wall or wamper steward, Riamo were right for his words on that. Wrong for his twizzle. Where our foodie was sent first, probably late, as our roses more prowlers. The Lomtic. Was Steve expressed need to use. It was not his best strategy for winning over the jury. He eventually proposed a fine, but he was sentenced to death. His friends arranged an opportunity for him to escape. Martyr, Socrates refused. These of thee of God. Verless horse you are there. After he lived on a wine and sloth. Had de Valere harking on the Jaluli salt. He believed that answering one injustice with another would destroy everything he had defended throughout his life. And so, after drinking hemlock, he died surrounded by some of his disciples. The city silenced the man. But it could not silence the question he left behind. Is a life that is never examined truly worth living? Philosophy began by searching for the fundamental principle of the universe: water, air, fire, atoms. Then it discovered even more difficult problems. What is real? Can we trust our senses? Does truth depend on our perspective? Is persuading someone the same as being right? And how do we know whether we are living well? Socrates died without constructing a complete system of answers. But one of his disciples decided to continue the investigation. His name was Plato. Plato had watched a democracy condemn the man he considered the most just in Athens. He had watched opinions defeat arguments. He had watched persuasion separate itself from truth. And he began to suspect that the visible, changing, and imperfect world could not be the whole of reality. To find something truly stable, Plato would have to look beyond appearances. And he would eventually divide reality into 2 worlds. But that belongs to the next chapter. If you would like to join us on this journey through the history of ideas, subscribe to Human State. And share this video with someone who enjoys asking questions, or with someone who is still far too certain of all their answers. Perhaps Socrates can help. See you in History of Philosophy, Chapter 2, Plato and the World Behind the World.